very much. I hope I'm audible to you. Can you hear me clearly, Aidana? If you can hear me clearly, obviously all of you will obviously hear me clearly. Huh?
Yes, yes, we can
All
hear
right.
you.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Let me briefly introduce myself. Although my introduction has already been given in the in the poster. My name is Syed Abdul Manan. I work as associate professor in the Graduate School of Education in Nazarbayev University. Basically, I'm from Pakistan. I did my PhD from University of Malaya, Malaysia in the year 2015. I also have got about 14 to 15 years of teaching experience in a public sector university in Pakistan. So my research, my research interests are, or the areas of my research interest are language policy and planning, and then I also look at language and education, then so many other related areas which I'll be talking about briefly in my presentation. Right? So before I formally start my presentation, let me give you a bit of background of why I chose this topic, and why is this topic important to me. There could have been some other topics as well, right? But I feel there are academicians, there are aspiring students, there are PhD candidates who will be graduating soon, and they would certainly need to get to know about this publication business or publication activity. So that is where I wanted to share my experiences, my insights with you. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to clarify a few things, like rather issue a disclaimer, right? A disclaimer. The disclaimer is about, you know, this presentation is about about not presenting rather highly theoretical or conceptual material, or something that is profoundly scholarly, right? And or it is rather remarkably technical. Now, the strength of this presentation basically lies in the personal story that I'll be sharing with you, right? So this personal story, the personal story of a novice researcher who is ambitious, but at the same time is faced with certain disadvantages. Okay, so like I myself had certain disadvantages, to get my work published. The disadvantages are having a poor schooling background, because I come from Pakistan, and then from within Pakistan I come from a rather underdeveloped and backward area, from a very typical village. So that was the biggest advantage. So I didn't have very nice schooling, I must say. And then I also belonged to an uneducated home environment where there was no academic support of any kind. Financial constraints were also seriously sort of hampering my progress. And the most significant, or the most serious barrier, was that of English language deficiency, as we all the non-native speakers are sort of faced with, right? And then there was also the lack of proper academic and career counseling. And the last disadvantage, the last but not the least, is, I must say, the tyranny of origin, or the tyranny of geography. By this I mean that being from Pakistan, being educated in Malaysia, not from any Western university, being a non-native speaker, and then being faced with the English language complex, as so many youngsters are faced with. So simply all these typical categories, these typical categorizations, and these social constructions were seriously hampering my progress, and they cause serious mental and otherwise stress to me. But I must say that when I joined University of Malaya, the university from where I did my PhD, it is the top ranked university situated in Kuala Lumpur. That provided me with the best platform, right, to shape me as an academic scholar. It provided me with ample opportunities to grow and realize my academic potential. uh, I must also highlight, this is quite important, right, to highlight and to emphasize, because there are many universities across so many countries that they don't put any condition for the reward for the award of a PhD degree, right? So to my good luck, the university from where I did my PhD, it required 2 Web of Sciences research papers, right, to be published before you get graduated. Otherwise, you won't be able to get your degree. So I believe that condition fundamentally pushed me towards publication, and it also served as a driving force. And by that time, I had no choice, but I had to struggle hard. I had to work hard to upgrade my level of scholarship, right? So at the same time, I also realized that publication in a reputed journal is the prerequisite, for gaining some sort of reputation as an academic scholar, as an academician, as they say that. Publish or perish. If you don't publish, you would rather perish, right? So I had that in mind because one of my professors taught me this during masters, that Manan, if you want to flourish as a scholar, you need to publish, otherwise you will disappear, right? So publication, I felt, was the trump card for me. So they could really take me some sort of put me on some track, right, to be competitive with the rest of academicians. So this is a brief background. Now I will start sort of sharing my screen, showing you my presentation, right, which is brief, but I would welcome your question towards the end. Uh, can you see my screen, uh,
Yes.
Aidana? Right. Okay. Is it clear? So. So I'm sharing, as I pointed out, I'm sharing my experiential insights into challenges and opportunities for publishing in quality research journals. Right. So this is the outline of the presentation. First, I will explain what is my experiential insight based on. When I say experiential insight, obviously it must have some roots, some sources. So what are the sources of my experiential insights? I'll be showing you a snapshot of my publication journey, that how I've been able to publish, right? And then secondly, I will also explain and rather share my narratives of what made me publish what I have published so far. So these are some personal traits and tendencies, And then thirdly, then what kind of awareness has worked for me? So when I say what has worked for me, obviously it is implied that it would certainly work for other scholars as well. And next, I will talk about what do I publish about, why is it important to expand one's range of topical areas, yeah? And then lastly, I'll be talking about what are some crucial things to remember and practice in order to publish, in order to stay, as a dynamic scholar. Right. So this table sort of presents my publication journey. I thought it is important to contextualize. Uh, you know, this journey started in the year 2014. In the year 2012, I started doing my PhD, and by the end of 2015, I graduated. So it took me nearly 3 years to submit my thesis for evaluation and then get graduated. So almost within 3 years, I managed to do my PhD, right? So, so 2014 and 2015 means that I was still doing my PhD. So, and one thing more I must highlight, when I talk about publications here, I'm not highlighting all the publications that I've made, which includes book chapters and papers published in journals other than Web of Sciences journals. This particular table presents only those publications which are sort of indexed in the Web of Sciences journals, and then predominantly they are included in the Q1 journals, right? So this is a brief journey. In 2014, I managed to publish 3, and then 2015 2, then 2016 1, then 2017 5, 2018 1, 2019 3, 2025, 2021 1, right? And I also thought I must share with you that what was my role in those publications, right? Because people claim that they have made they have published papers, and they sort of look after counting. For me, it is more important to be the first author rather than being the second, third, or fourth author, right? So as a first, the second row sort of shows you that in how many papers I was the first author. Like the papers in 2014, for all of them, I was the first author. Then 2015, again, I was the first author. And then similarly, the list goes on and on, right? So in most of my papers, I have been the main author. And towards the end, you could ask any question, that what is good and what is bad about to be first author or second or third author. So I have remained a second author in only 5 of those papers, right? Now, let me tell you the total tally. In total, I have uh, published 21 papers, right? Ever since I started my academic journey in 2014. So if you just draw out average, it makes almost 3.5 a year, so out of those 25, 16 of them fall in the Q1 category, right? I'll explain to you what is Q1 if you need me to explain later on. And one in Q2 and one in Q3, and 3 of the papers were not in those journals which are counted as Q1 or Q2 or Q3, but they still fall in the Web of Science category. Right. And for me, not only this is important to publish, right, with high-ranked journals, but it's also important to know where you publish, and because researchers normally don't know where they should go for publications, right? Which route should they take? Who are the potential publishers, right? So just wanted to demonstrate where I have published, right? With whom I have published, right? 13 of my papers are with Taylor and Francis, then 1 each with Springer, John Benjamin, elsewhere, Willie, etc. You can get a look at the list, right? So this is my Google Scholar account. You can get a look at it. So the total number of citations are 335, right? With H and I index, it is showing, right? So I guess as a scholar, even before starting my PhD, I had my Google Scholar account, because I believe that having a Google Scholar account has got so many advantages for students, for academicians, whether they are publishing or not, because it provides you with a wonderful platform and gives you exposure to so many scholars, so many research areas, and so it provides you with a very rich matrix of so many things. So I would advise you all to register for it and have your Google Scholar, even if you don't have any single paper, but you can still follow other scholars in order to get updated about the kind of work they are publishing. Right. Because my emphasis has been on highlighting personal insights, so I've got a personal philosophy that has really worked for me, right? And I'm really sure that the same philosophy can work for all of you as well, those who are novice researchers, those who are aspiring to publish in good journals. There is a tendency, because this philosophy basically is rooted in the kind of feelings that I had, right, earlier on, during my PhD. I had this apprehension, this fear of not sharing my work with others, because I was afraid of criticism. I was like, I didn't have faith in my scholarship. I thought maybe others would make fun of me, others would consider my work as stupid or some stupid idea. So I had that tendency. That is why, so the first philosophy is start doing and stop thinking. The second philosophy that has really worked for me is learn by doing rather than by thinking or planning only. Then the third philosophy, which is again instrumental in my academic progress, my academic achievements, is they are taking chances in risks, right? So let me just tell you why this start doing and stop thinking philosophy is important. Because I remember when I met my supervisor for the first time during my PhD. So I showed her some of my work that I was interested, prior to getting my landing in University of Malaya. I had collected data right from the university in Pakistan where I was working. So my intention was, as soon as I land in University of Malaya and before my proposal is accepted, right, I must have some data to work on and start practicing, writing papers. So when I shared my idea with her, she was quite excited and quite encouraging, and asked me to start writing, paper, and then quickly share with me. And but I had the same tendency. I was writing, but I was delaying. My paper. After a couple of months, she wrote an email to me that, Manan, you promised me that you would share your work with me, but you didn't share. You didn't turn up. So I used to make some lame excuses. But finally, when she called me to meet her, during the meeting, she told me that, see, I have seen so many scholars, because she is vastly experienced, Professor Maya David from Malaysia. So then she advised me that, see, if you really want to grow as a scholar, right, be very confident, have faith in your work, right? Right. So, and start doing rather than thinking. Okay, only thinking won't work. I need something tangible. I need something that is concrete, right, in concrete form, rather than thinking. Right. Then, so from then onwards, I started to sort of develop faith in my work. So that is why I believe those personal philosophies have really taken me that far, and they have really worked for me. I mean, so start doing, stop thinking, learn by doing. And the more I started to do writing and do readings, the more I developed as a scholar, right? And then I also took chances, because new scholars who are doing PhD, or those who have done masters, those who haven't got publication experience, tend to get scared of those big names, those big journals. They tend to underestimate their own potential. So when I share all that, I'm reminded of my own feelings, and obviously many of you might also have the same feelings. So and then I took chances. I thought, never mind if my work gets rejected, or whatever the consequences may be, but I need to take chances. So I started to submit my work to high ranked journals, so that even if it is rejected, there would be a lot to learn from the reviewers' comments. So rather than sitting idle thinking, it is better to take chances. So for me, it is better to fail rather than not try. Right. And there were some other personal traits and tendencies which I believe have really helped me, and they motivated me. I think you might call them idiosyncratic tendencies or personal traits, but whatever they are, they have honestly and frankly, they have really helped for me. So I call them as the 7 Ps, right? The 7 Ps, I call them, because they start with P letters. The first is patient. A scholar who doesn't have patience for work will not go far. I had serious patience for my work, and the topic on which I was working. I have worked on language policy and planning. I took up this subject, this topic, because It is rooted in my schooling experiences, in the kind of challenges that I faced during my schooling days, because I was going through a kind of schooling where my own language, Pashto, was excluded. It was not part of the curriculum. We were taught Urdu, which is the national language of the country. But since we lived in a remote area, in a rural village, we didn't have exposure to Urdu language. So Urdu was in a way an alien language to me, not only to me but to all children, right, studying there. So we had no clue of the language, right, in which the content was taught. We were taught science in Urdu, social studies in other subjects. So we used to do rote learning, do memorization rather than internalizing the concepts cognitively, rather than creating something, rather than being imaginative, rather than being critical about things. So we just blindly followed and blindly did rote learning rather than. So then, from then onward, I thought, if I get a chance, I will certainly try to work on area where I would advocate, the cause of mother tongue education, multilingual education, and would criticize, would deconstruct these policy and planning discourses. So I had serious passion for my work. That is why it gave me energy, and it gave me a sort of it motivation. And then the second quality is positivity. As I told you, that I always believed in taking risks. So I was always positive. I never stopped thinking positively. I thought that whatever the level of the journal may be, I would which I believe has played an instrumental role was, again, it's related to positivity, because it was there of pluck. I was Pluck means, being courageous, being bold, being adventurous, being risk taker, right? I was never afraid of criticism. Was never sort of never thought of the ranking of the journal. I tried my best in my own ways. And the third tendency, or the third trait, which I believed has helped me, was that of practice, because I constantly practiced, because practice was, I believe, is the best teacher. And the fifth trait is that of patience. Academic scholars must have patience. Patience is extremely important, because you're uncertain, about what would be the outcome of your submission, right? At times you might receive very bad comments, very harsh comments that might demoralize you, that might demotivate you, and at times it takes a lot of time for the review process to take. Let me give you an example of why I say so. you know um, not last year, I submitted my paper to one of the journals, for which I received major revisions. Then I submitted the revised version in September last year. Now, today, when I checked the status of my paper, it is still hanging, and it has not been sent to the reviewers for second review, because they say that they are not getting reviewers. So I have to be patient. I have to wait and just absorb, right? Whatever the outcome may be. So you need to have this. You need to cultivate this quality, this tribute in your personality. And then perseverance, continuous work, right, on self-development, on improvement. The last but not the least, perceptiveness. By perceptiveness, I mean it's the kind of the quality to be smart and intelligent and strategic in understanding, that which journals are most suitable for your work, right? Who is the editor, whether I can sort of I can get away with criticism or not, right? Which journal really suits your work, right? And how to package your manuscript and what title to choose, how to work on abstract, right? So all this quality, being smart, being sort of perceptive of all the complexities, all the challenges, that one faces for publication. So all these 7 traits, which I call the 7 P's, because they start with Palantir, right? So they have seriously contributed to my makeup as a scholar. You could ask question later on about how I've developed them. Uh, uh, this is an image, because at times, when you are doing your PhD, at times you're alone. There is no one to support you, right? So you need to support yourself. You need to talk to yourself. When I submitted my first ever paper to a journal, which is ISI, Web of Science journal, falling in Q1 category. When my paper was rejected from there, I was seriously disappointed, because I thought that I had written very good papers. So one of the reviewers' comments were quite positive, but the two reviewers, the other reviewers' comments were rather harsh, rather bitter, right? So they had, like, one of the reviewers had written that this paper is academically, artistically, and linguistically very poor, right? And then so I took his words, and then got a piece of paper, wrote his comments, right? And then you can also see the date mentions. So I pasted this in my small room. I would always get a look at it, right? It is the Journal of Multilingual and Multicultural Development. So I would get a look at it and would try to practice and improve my academic writing. So at times, such strategies, this self-talk, self-belief, and self-reliance can really help you, right? Yeah, one very basic question that is repeatedly being asked is that, should I publish during my PhD? Can I publish during my PhD, right? So these are the two questions which I thought, based on my own experiences, my own knowledge, I must share with you. My answer would be yes. You must try, to submit your work for publication, and at least start writing something. Why do I say so? Because there is a lot for learning. Let me tell you honestly, right? And the amount of learning that occurred during my PhD and my post PhD, right? So the learning the insights, the theoretical, academic, methodological insights that I have gathered from those reviewers' comments. Believe me, I have not learned from my supervisors that much as I've learned from reviewers, because reviewers, they are very objective, they are very neutral, they don't know who you are, because all the papers that I have published have gone through peer review system, right? So their criticism of your paper is very objective. They're really honest and objective in sort of pointing out the strengths and weaknesses of your. So there is a lot to learn from the reviewers' comments, right? So if you don't submit, you won't be able to get that luxury of learning from. And by the way, those reviewers are learned people. They are experts in their own ways, right? They are highly experienced, in reviewing so many papers over the years. So their expertise could really help polish your academic writing and your approach towards publication. And then secondly, you can really sum up the strengths and weaknesses of your work, right? If you send your work for publication and then receive the comments, so that will sort of enable you to sum up the strengths and weaknesses of your work. Otherwise, you won't be able to know about it. uh, and then you can grow in confidence before a thesis defense. Thesis defense in Viva is one of the horrible feelings, one of the horrible experiences that most graduates sort of encounter. So for me, all that process went very smoothly, because before going for my Viva, right, and for my PhD defense, I had 3 Web of Sciences journals under my belt. So I felt very confident. Before my defense, I had almost defended my work. So again, I would advise you to go for it. And then your work earns a stamp of quality, because if you publish with good journals, your work automatically certifies to be a good work, right? Because those journals do not entertain, do not really publish the work that is of poor quality. So it automatically gives you that advantage. People tend to recognize your work because it has been published in journals. And then you also learn the art of extracting papers from the thesis. This is an art which not many people know. Many people, many PhD theses or master's theses get wasted because they remain in the shelves, right? Rather than being advertised, being open to people for reading or the community of practice. Right. And then a publication can also build academic profile. Like I showed you my Google Scholar account. So that is an indicator of how I have, with the passage of time, built that profile. Right. In 2012, I did not have a single paper. And then, in the span of, let's suppose, 7 to 8 years, I've been able to get these many publications. So that is why I believe in doing rather than thinking. And then you also get the limelight, by publishing your work. You sort of advertise your work. You sort of, your publication attracts other scholars. Other scholars get to know about you. So that is right. And then it also enhances the employability potential. Having a PhD degree with a couple of publications in good journals would give you a serious advantage over others who don't have. So my answer would be definitely yes, go. This is what I say is based on my own experiences. It is not just I say for the sake of saying. I have personally shown that. During my PhD stint, I was able to do 4 publications for my PhD thesis, 1 book chapter and 3 Web of Sciences journals. And then at the same time, I also did 5 publications from data other than my PhD thesis. The timeline is 2012 to 2015, right? And there were 3 other publications, post PhD from my thesis, like 2016 to 2017. So it indicates that if you are really committed, if you really take it as a challenge, you can succeed. You know, I move to the next slide now. What is important? What is important for a scholar who is aspiring to publish? There are basic things. Obviously, many of you might know, but I would again re-emphasize that they are extremely important. And such awareness has helped me a lot. It is developing sufficient awareness about a number of important things. The first thing is how many and what journals are published in your field, your research area. You need to know. People, scholars come to me, saying that I don't know where to publish. I don't know where are journals and how to identify journals, how to locate journals. I guess this is very important. So to know the list of journals in your area of research. And then in the next couple of slides, I'll show you if you really need the way to locate journals of your field. Then who is the publisher is again very important, because by knowing who is the publisher, you can get away with predatory journals, or substandard journals, the journals that are only for profit and business making rather than publishing quality academic work. If you need some more information about predatory journals, I can talk in the question answer session. And the next thing that you need to know about is the frequency of publication. How often or how many issues of a journal are published in a year. That is extremely important, because the more the frequency, the more the chances for more papers, right? Now, a new researcher who has not got the experience, or who doesn't have profile or reputation as a scholar, right? If he or she tries a journal that is published just once a year or twice a year, biannual, I mean, there is less chance for him or her to succeed rather than a journal which publishes quarterly or which publishes, for example, six issues or 8 issues, or even there are journals that publish every month. So this frequency can sort of create chances for more publishability. Then you also need to know about what is the focus and scope or the aim of the journal. This is a very basic condition, right? Unless you know the scope of the journal, you won't be sure whether this is relevant to the topic, which you want to submit to the journal, right? So by going to the website of the journal, by knowing the scope and the aim of the journal, you can avoid this waste of time. And then, because if the journal is not if the paper is not relevant to the scope of the journal, there is, then the reviewer will, sorry, the editor will return your work without any peer review. So it will waste your time. So in order to avoid that, you need to be very careful and know well, right? And then, who is the editor? Who are amongst the editorial board members? I mean, that awareness is again very important. And try to, because you might be using a theory or conceptual framework, right? Which sort of originates from one of those scholars. So there is likelihood that your paper might go to one of those reviewers who understands your work very well and really appreciates, right, your work. So that is again very important. So and then you also need to know about the theoretical and conceptual slant of certain journals, because certain journals, they encourage papers, right, which follow or which use mixed methods research. Some journals prefer only a qualitative research. Some journals, welcome papers that are written purely in like and they choose quantitative methods. So you need to know this. Awareness is again very important. Then what are some other crucial things to remember and practice for a new scholar? It is like keeping pace with the developments and production of knowledge that takes place in the field. You need to keep yourself updated in the field, right? And then you also need to have a thorough awareness of different scholarly, theoretical, or paradigmatic trends, and knowing where you stand paradigmatically. You need to know what your epistemological beliefs are, because they would give you a serious advantage, right? And then you'll be able to clearly articulate your theoretical views, and analyze your data. And then it is also very important, what are the current buzzwords or the hot topics in your area of research. You need to be wary of that, because these publication houses, when they publish your work, right, because they do not publish it for the sake of publication or for the dissemination of knowledge only. They've got their commercial motives and commercial interests, right? So they like papers written on the hottest topics, because they excite some other scholars, libraries, and basically commercial motives are also very important. So for that, you also need to know, and if you know it, what are the buzzwords in your area of research, or the hottest topics. You have more chances to get your work published. And then also knowing about the potential gaps in research and data of your own context, country in particular, right? Again, this gap is very important to know, so that you can articulate the significance that your submission has, or your paper has. And then knowing the work of most prolific authors in your field, and consistently following their publications. Whatever your area of interest is, okay, or your area of focus is, you need to know those scholars who are sort of prolific authors who publish a lot and whose theories are around, yeah. And you need to consistently follow the publications, you know. And other things that are required, you know, attending conferences, establishing networks of scholarly communities, that is extremely important. Then subscribing to how to keep pace with the knowledge and the developments that are taking place in the field. You need to subscribe to different sources and platforms for getting updated, such as Google Scholar, academia.edu, ResearchGate. And then also you can subscribe to the main publishers I have pointed out in their journals, such as Springer, Taylor and Francis, elsewhere, Oxford, Cambridge, etc. So by doing all this, you know, you can remain a dynamic scholar and you can get yourself updated with the developments that are taking place in your field. Right now, I go fast because I guess we are running short of time. So now these are the websites, right? How many and what journals are published in your field and research, right? You can go to master journal list. You know, you can see the category. Suppose if your area of interest is education, then you can go on to find, you know, this category, and then you can find a whole list of journals, you know, that are published by Web of Science in your field, right? And then in order to identify the ranking of the journal, you can go to scientific journal ranking. It is their website. You can go on, type or paste journal's name or ISSN number, and then it will show you the whole record of whether it falls in the Q1 category, Q2 category, Q3 category, in order to make sure that it is really a genuine journal. Uh, this is something to know about the aims and scope of the journal. So each journal has got its own web page, you know. So it looks like this is from Taylor and Francis. The journal is Language and Education. By looking through the aims and scope of the journal, you'll be able to know whether this is relevant to your area. And in such a way, every journal provides this information. As I was talking about the editorial board and editorial board members list and their names, again, very important. So what do I publish about? What is the range of topical areas within? Now, it's not very important, but I would like to focus on why is expanding the range of topical areas important, right? This is very important if you really want to publish more and more, right? I started from language policy and planning, right? Within language policy and planning, then I sort of focused on language and education and medium of instruction, I also started to look at language and politics, and then language ideologies, classroom practices. Then I moved to English medium instruction, and then the minoritization of languages, language shift, and language indentation. These are all different areas, subtopics in our area. Then folk theorization and fallacies, monoglossia, and then language and inclusion, like language and inclusive education, I'm quite interested in. Then I've also tried to write about linguistic landscape research, then world Englishes and localization. Then my latest papers have sort of dwelt on a multilingual turn and translanguaging. And now I'm also writing about coloniality and decoloniality, then agency and activism, then neoliberalism, which are quite recent topics. So by what I'm trying to say is, you cannot sort of stick to one particular subject, right? You need to expand your horizon, your range of scholarship, so that you get more space for publication, as well as expand your range of scholarship. So that is what is very important to me. Uh, right. I think it will take a lot of time, because here I thought I must explain to you what is a good paper like what are the constituents of a good paper, right? If you got any specific question, I can answer towards the end, but I think we can skip this this particular thing. Titles, we can talk about titles. I've done and worked a lot in this area. You can ask me why titles are important. So summing up, now start doing, stop thinking. This is what is extremely important. Then learn by doing rather than by thinking. Take chances and risks, and remember any of the 7 P's. And then remember that today's novices are tomorrow's giants, and today's giants were novices once. This is what I strongly believe in. So thank you very much. Now, I would welcome your questions and anything you would like to know. Thank you.